Welcome to the Lean Podcast, where empowerment and alignment come together. I'm your host, Mahogany, here to guide you through inspiring stories of resilience, overcoming grief, health challenges, career struggles, and more. Together, we'll lean into strength, embrace growth, and discover the power of sharing experiences. Before we dive into today's episode, I'd like to start with a prayer. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to join me. Dear God, thank you for this space to uplift, inspire, and empower. Bless the woman sharing her story today and those who are listening. May this podcast be a source of hope, healing, and alignment with your purpose for our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, you guys, welcome Ayuna with us. She is a registered nurse. She is a mama, and she is a content creator. Please help me welcome Ayuna.
Yay!
Hey, girl. Thank you so much for
Hey,
being here with us. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. It's been a day, but we are here.
It's so special being on here with you.
You are so special. You are so special. Today, you guys, we have Ayuna here sharing with us her experience with grief and loss. As you know, when we go through grief and loss, it's not ever an easy situation. And although grief and loss never truly goes away, Ayana has been able to catapult her hurtful experiences in life to be this amazing woman you see today. So, Ayana, before we get into it, tell us a little bit about who you are.
So, I'm Ayana. I am from a small town called Lubbock, Texas. Well, I guess it's kind of a little big town now. It's grown. Um, so, I feel like I'm just, just a typical everyday girl, and I feel like I tend to like water myself down a lot and don't really give myself credit for anything. But so yeah, like basically, I'm a registered nurse. I'm a mom. I have a 12-year-old son, and I actually am pregnant now. So that is a new journey. So I'm starting over again. So I've been working as a nurse now for almost 2 years, and I'm just navigating my career, trying to, still just daily figuring out life, what's next for me, and just always, just really trying to avoid just staying stagnant and trying to keep growing. Um, like I said, I have my son. I'm here with my boyfriend. We all relocated here together, and that's been um, that's been a blessing in its own way. And so here we are today.
Okay,
Did that
awesome.
okay?
Yeah, girl, hype yourself up, y'all. We need to be
Okay.
hyping ourselves up. This girl has an amazing story, um, from what I know personally. So definitely give yourself your props. Um,
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about you, or maybe a lot of it, like as far as your grief journey
Mhm,
goes. Maybe tell us a little bit about childhood, how things were,
mhm.
and when you did experience grief and loss for the first time.
Okay. Okay, so let's start way, way back in the dark ages. Just kidding. But, so like I say, so I grew up in a small town. I'm the oldest of three children. My mother had three kids, and it was always just us. So pretty much at an early age, I had to like take on like the responsibility of helping out with, raising my brother and sister while my mom worked, just being a single mom. And so I had amazing grandparents. So my grandparents, they had a total of 9 children, but my mom was the youngest. So since she was the baby, she was kind of more like coddled a lot. So me and my siblings, we spent a lot of time with our grandparents. So they played a big role in my life. So just growing up, my grandparents were actually very religious. So like they was always going to church all the time, and I just remembered like I just wanted to be just like my grandma. So like I wanted to do everything she did. So she introduced me to like makeup. I would watch her put her makeup on and like, put her pretty dresses on that she would wear to church, and I would want to be just like her. So she would let me wear lip gloss. That's all I could wear. And so then, so as I continued to grow older, she I feel like my grandma really played a big role in my life. I would go to work with her. I pretty much did everything with her up until I was, I guess, like, becoming like a teenager and stuff, like as you start getting older. And I feel like it was really helpful, like for my mom, because, like I say, she had three of us, and it was just always hard. Like, that's one thing I remember from being a kid was, excuse me, just always struggling, like financially. Like, it would be a lot of times where we would all have to go live with my grandparents because my mom would be like on a hard time. And then finally, we were able to get like, I guess, like on Section 8. And so that was like the most stable that we had got for like a very long time. And so that helped us a lot. Um, but it was really hard. Like, just like I said, since I was the oldest, I had so much responsibility on me. And oh, girl, I guess I'm about to get real personal on here, girl. I don't ever
Go
tell
ahead.
the story. but
That's what we're here for.
but yeah, it was just really hard. So like, basically, I didn't have the best relationship with my mom, and like as I've grown older, I really try to give her grace, but I just have a really hard time. So I guess we'll get kind of deeper into the story as it goes. But like I said, as a kid, that's what I remember. Like, her doing the best that she could to try to raise us. My grandparents played a big part financially, and my grandma basically took over for me. And then my mom will be like, doing everything for my brother and sister. But I was like, I almost felt like Cinderella though. Like, I got a lot of backlash from certain family members and stuff, since I was like my grandma's favorite. My grandma was not nice at all. She was very strict, but she was always really nice to me. And unfortunately, like, I didn't have no control over that. And so, now that she has passed, like, I still get little backlash here and there, like family, oh, well, you were always the favorite, or things worked out for you because of everybody liked you. But honestly, I think everybody just felt sorry for me because my mom was not very attentive to me. Like, I basically was responsible for running the household. Like, I had to clean up behind everyone. I did everybody's laundry. I learned how to cook at an early age, so I would cook, but sometimes she would cook, but like whatever she like, if she cooked, like, then I had to do everything else. So like every day I woke up, I knew like, oh, I have to make sure, I had the house spotless clean, or else, I would get in trouble. And then she, like, I know, like, mostly during the summer months, like I would be home, I would be taking care of them. But to this day, I feel like that's kind of why I don't have a strong relationship between my siblings. So I am 7 years older than my brother. No, than my sis. Okay, it's 7 years. Basically, they're both 7 years. One of them is okay. I feel like a bad sister for
Like
saying it out loud.
7 and then 7. So it's like 7 from the first and then like what, 14 from the other?
7, and I guess maybe 9.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so yeah, because they're like 2 years apart. So my little brother, I remember I was 7 whenever we had him, and things were still kind of good at that point. Like, I was like, when I was smaller, like I would say from 7 down, I don't really have a lot of bad memories because, like I say, mom would just work all the time, and I would get dropped off with family, whoever could babysit me. So I just, I was just, everybody was nice to me. So I enjoyed being around my older cousins, my aunts, and my grandma. But then after she started having more kids, that's whenever things kind of got harder for me. But yeah, so I don't think we have a good relationship because it was so much like, I almost felt like division that was created. So they knew, oh, like, oh, if Ayana doesn't do this for us, she's gonna get in trouble. So like they would literally like double team on me. And like, I'll never forget, I had a diary and I would write in there, oh, I hate my mom, I can't wait to move out. And they turned my diary in on me, girl. They gave the diary to my mom, and it was like, I was so mad. And she's like, oh, I can't believe you feel like this. But I'm like, well, look how you treat me. Like, but I never had the courage to say it. I was always a good kid, and I listened to the rules because that was the only way I could have like freedom. Like, if I knew if I was good and I didn't get in trouble, I could go stay the night at my cousin's house because that was really the only place I could go. Like, she really didn't let me go to a lot of people's house. I had some friends, and I feel like having my family, like my cousin that I would spend a lot of time with, and also like my friends that I had at a young age, just being able to see their family dynamics and how their mom treated them, and just even though like they were not probably not doing any better financially, but like just this love and the support, like I saw that and I was like, oh my God, like, I wish I had that. Like one day if I have kids, like, I'm gonna, be that to my children. Like my grandparents were amazing, but they were old, girl. Like my grandpa was born in 1937.
Hmm.
So they were pretty old. So they were from the olden times. So it was like I knew they loved me, but they didn't say it, like it wasn't like I guess it was just kind of something that I just knew because I guess to me I translated their love because they were supportive. Like I knew if I needed something I could always go to them. Like my grandpa would do anything to make sure like we had whatever we needed. So that was a little bit of childhood. As
So, what was you and your mom's relationship like? I hear you saying it was almost like you were a co-parent to her in a lot of ways, but what was it like
Yes.
personally with her?
It wasn't very personable. Like we really didn't talk to each other a lot. She literally would like I said, she would go to work, she would come home and like she's like smoke cigarettes, she would drink her beer. Like literally she had this routine where we would eat, like I say, I would clean up, I would do everything and she would just sit there and she would just drink her beer, smoke cigarettes, and then she would when it was time for her to go to bed for work, she would go to bed. But like no, like we never talked as much. Like it was more like her kind of giving me commandments on what to do. And I do remember at a young age, like I would have to help her a lot, like with like not like at that time I wasn't old enough to have money, but like she'll be like calling around like with bills and like stuff like that. Like she'll have all these like you go through your mail, and so she'll have me like sorting out her mail and like getting everything together for her. So that's how I knew that I never wanted to have bad credit and I always wanted to keep a job because I would literally be right there listening to her, like, calling around whatever chores she had me doing, helping her with her bill management or something. And so I was right there, and I still know her social security number to this day because of having to be there, like doing all that stuff for her. But I guess to answer the question, it wasn't very personable. Like it was almost kind of just like, we lived together. I spent a lot of time like at home. I would just be in my bedroom, like just by myself. I would either talk to my friends on the phone, or I did, like I said, I had a journal. Like I would journal a lot back then, or just kind of like really just kind of fantasize about really like life. And just, I was literally always just so ready to move out because I just never felt welcome. I felt out of place and just like a burden almost. I feel like that's, yeah, I guess that kind of summarized it. I just felt more like a burden. So it wasn't really a strong relationship between me and her. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. What
Okay.
was your mom's relationship like with her parents, with her being the youngest?
So apparently she was kind of like a rebellious child. So she, my grandparents did everything for her. It seems like they were really good parents to her. But as far as like their other kids, like they really, wasn't able to attend to them as much because it was back in the olden times where everybody just had kids. They worked in the cotton field and stuff. And so, but since my mom was the youngest, everybody was grown ups. So it was easier for them to actually be a parent to her. And like whenever they had hers, whenever they became like real Christiany, so they kind of started changing their ways and stuff. But I don't know what happened because she just, like I said, she rebelled so much against them. I think because they coddled her a little too much. And then as she got older, she like started to hate them almost. It was at one point when I was like a teenager where she wouldn't even let us see them. Like they couldn't come to our house. She wouldn't let us go over there. And it was very strange because, like I say, they had played so much of a supportive role financially and, mentally. So I don't know what happened there. So it was said like that when she was a kid, that she had maybe like got possessed or something. And so, but I think now, like just as I've gotten older and just seeing like where her life is now, I really think she had like a lot of mental health problems. And I think it just, people are not very aware of mental health even back then. So I think she might have had some type of like maybe bipolar, schizophrenia, something like that could have been underlining causing her to feel like she was seeing things or like whatever that backstory was. And so that kind of brings like the story on like kind of like how I came about because once she turned, I think she was like 18, 17, 18, like she like ran off to California with my dad. Like I didn't meet my dad till I was 15. And so
Mm.
she ran off to California. She didn't even know him. Like she met him and like she just like left. And it was like apparently it was a big thing. Like my grandpa was devastated, and whenever she came back, she was gone for like a year, and she got pregnant, and that's how she ended up coming back to Texas. And they had to, I think they got her a plane or a bus ticket or something. And so I feel like that kind of contribute to like I feel like she had maybe some resentment towards me because of how I was conceived, and um I don't know if she felt like I don't know what her thoughts were, but I think that kind of caused her to like treat me like the way she treated me, like almost as if she didn't want me, really. And so then, like I said, my brother and sister came along. They have the same dad, and he was nice. He did the best that he could, but it was very toxic. They would fight all the time. Like I don't even know why. Like I was little. I just know like they would literally like have fist fights, and then I felt more left out because, I felt like they were a family and I felt like I was kind of just like the household maid, basically. And so I really can't believe that I didn't rebel. I kind of wish I would have been rebellious when I was a kid because I'm like, why was I just sitting there? but, yeah, so I felt left out. Like, they had their thing going on and then it was just me. Um, like she didn't like leave me like and go do stuff without me or nothing, but you can just feel it. You can feel the difference. Like I would see how she would treat them and how they were treated, and then it was just, oh well, you're the oldest, well, you just, or your granny will get something for you. So um that was, yeah, they stayed together quite for some years. And then like after I turned, I would say when I was 15, that's whenever like my life really kind of took a hard left. Childhood, like I say, wasn't, I mean, besides just struggling and being treated like Cinderella, like it wasn't just completely terrible. But then as I got into teenage years, like I don't know what happened to her, but she just like lost her mind basically. So I remember she like, oh God, I can't believe I'm talking about this. Mahogany, what are you doing to me?
It's the mahogany
But,
woman effect. It happens to everyone. It happens to everyone.
so basically, she was like, I guess deciding that she wanted a girlfriend. And so, like I say, my grandparents were very religious. So, I don't feel like, well, I know they wouldn't have accepted it, but they loved her. So they would had, they wouldn't have just turned their backs to her. So I'll never forget, like one day I had just woke up randomly in the middle of the night and I came out and she had company over, and it was a lady and she was just like sitting there on our couch and she had these black sunglasses on at night, and it was just weird. And it's like when I saw her, like, girl, I just felt like I seen a devil. Like it was
Mhm.
very weird. Like it just disturbed me. And I was just like, but they, they were just sitting there on the couch just watching TV, but it was so like it just didn't sit right. So I remember just going back to my room and I just kind of thought about it like why did like well, who is that? Like why did I feel like that when I seen her? So as time go by, girl, she just basically started neglecting us. Like she would just leave the house and not tell us where she was going. Like she would just be gone. And it was like basically the lady started coming over like more and more, and like I noticed that she would try to like tell my younger siblings what to do. My brother was kind of like the trouble child. He would always get in trouble in school. And so she thought it would be a good idea for her to like step up and like try to like get onto him. And so my brother came to me, like I was, like I said, I'm always in my room. And so he came in my room and he was like, oh, like, she came in here and she was like yelling at me and like saying that she was going to whoop me if I didn't listen to my mom. And I was like, what? So, it make me mad. And like, I already felt some kind of way towards her because I can just feel the difference on how my mom was treating us. And so, girl, I had a fight with the lady. And I was like 16 at the time. And my mom just stood there. And like, I'm a kid and this is a grown woman. And I couldn't believe that I guess it was just so much anger and like frustration that had been built up. Cause like I said, that was during the time where my grandparents wasn't allowed to come to our house no more. We couldn't go to theirs. And that was like our only safe place. And it was a mess. So after that happened, I ended up, what happened after that? So that was the first event. She and I felt not protected by her. And then after that, like my brother, no, it was a lot of little stories. So then like another terrible story, like I ended up having like I had a miscarriage when I was 16. I didn't even know I was pregnant. And like, girl, when I was having the miscarriage, she was gone. Like, I don't even know where she was. She had just left the house and like she had took my phone because I guess that was her way of keeping us from calling people to let people know what was going on. So I was having a miscarriage and I had to send my brother like downstairs. We lived in apartments to call the neighbor to call my grandpa. So when my grandpa came and got us, and like soon as I walked in like the hospital, like I started like gushing out blood and they rushed me to the back and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And so that's when they was like, oh, like, she's having a miscarriage. I brought her just in time. And so that made me have more resentment towards her because it's like, where are you even at? Like, these are times where like we need you. And then we don't have no way to contact anybody. So yeah, so then I moved out at 17. And so that was literally the law. That's what they said once I got 17 because it just got worse and worse. She just kept, I don't know what happened. I really think she got involved with drugs, but was just trying to hide it. But yeah, so that's kind of how that my little upbringing turned into a tragedy. So
That absolutely does sound like a tragedy. That's a lot of stuff at once for a kid, especially.
yeah, so it was rough. So I stayed with my grandparents for a little bit, and then I was able to get me an apartment. And after I got my apartment, like I got pregnant again at a young age. I had my son. I was pregnant at 17, but I ended up having him at 18, and I still graduated high school and everything. Thankfully, it kind of played out to where I was pregnant in my senior year. And so, but my grandparents, they were just always there. Like whatever I needed, they did everything to try to support me. Like anything because my grandpa just always was like, oh, I see how much you try to help yourself. Like I worked at McDonald's all the way from 16 until when I had my son at 18. And I just did what I could to take care of myself because I felt like I didn't have like no support. And then I had my son, and I don't my mom had moved to another town at that point, and she didn't even come back into my life until my son was probably like 1, maybe. So like from the time that I was 17 when I moved, and like we really didn't have no contact with each other. And then I guess like 2 years went by and we kind of started rekindling things. And it's just been like a trickle effect from there. So then 2020, I'm gonna just kind of speed up. I've been talking a lot.
You don't just speed.
Um, um, so fast forward, to 2020. That's whenever COVID like was a thing, and my grandma had died from COVID, and that was really hard, really for me personally because I was so close to her, and it was sudden. Like nobody expected her to get COVID and die, and it was real hard on my grandpa, and I just remember like that's what made me get life insurance for one because she had a policy, but it was only worth like $1,000. So which they just didn't know any better, back then. And so having to be the strong person for my grandpa was really, I feel like I still never really grieved because I was so busy trying to do everything so that he could, handle it better because they had been together for so many years. Um, I was basically having, I planned her funeral by herself. My cousin had like stepped in and started helping me, but like I didn't know anything about none of that stuff. Like I didn't even have life insurance at that time. And so that kind of opened up my eyes to a different side of life. And then my grandpa he just took it really hard. And then my mom, that was another thing. Like she didn't even come to, she didn't even come to her service that we had. And it was crazy. So fast forward to a few years after that. Well, actually, no, not even a few years. I feel like that was kind of like, after my grandma passed, I did everything to try to help my grandpa. And then my grandpa ended up passing like maybe 8 months or so later, which honestly I feel like was a blessing in disguise in a way because he was so miserable without her. Like, and I know it was hard for him to keep carrying on. And so my grandparents were raising two of my little cousins. And so they ended up, I don't know where they live now, to be honest, but I know they're like 17 and 18 now. But he ended up basically having a heart attack, and it was crazy, girl. It was almost like I say, like destiny, really, because I remember him calling me. Like, we had kind of had a disagreement about my little cousin because everybody was like, oh, she doesn't need to live with y'all anymore. You can't, he's too old to take care of her because his health was getting really bad. And so I didn't talk to him for like a week because we kind of bumped heads. And then he called me. He was like, I need a ride to my doctor's appointment because he had a car wreck. And they were saying that the reason why he had a car wreck is because he had a heart attack while he was driving, but he didn't know it was like a silent one. And so my boyfriend ended up taking him to his doctor's appointment. And I remember my boyfriend called me and he was like, well, I can't make it. Like, I'm running late. Can you see if somebody else can? So he sent his sister, right? And so his sister ends up leaving because it was taking my grandpa so long to come outside. And so I called my boyfriend back and I'm like, well, you have to go. Like, you're going to have to go. I can't leave work. And so sure enough, he was able to get over there. And thankfully, he had his friend because he was like, your grandpa can't even walk. Like, we can't even get him to the car. So they ended up pushing him like on his walker. And I was like, well, I don't know what's going on with him. And so they helped him into the doctor's office and then they didn't go in with him. And so the same thing, they helped him back to the car and then they dropped him off and he called me and he was just like, yeah, he's not looking so good. Like, he went to his appointment and then, he just kept getting so short of breath. And I was like, oh, okay, when I leave work, I'm gonna go by there to check on him. And so sure enough, I left work, I stopped at the store, and my little cousin that lived with him called me and she's like crying. And I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, grandpa's in the bathroom and I went in there because he was in there for so long and he's not breathing. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, she was like, he was just sitting there. And I'm like, did you check? Well, she didn't know medical stuff, but basically he had passed away. And so I'm like, that's why I feel like those events happen. Like, because if his sister would have took him, I wouldn't have knew like how sick he was. And then the fact that my boyfriend ended up taking him. And so I went over there. The ambulance was there when I got there and they were doing chest compressions on him. And, hold on. So they've always lived in like the same house for like ever. And so what was crazy is because I knew he was dead already because it had been too long. Like, I don't even know, like, how long he had been on the toilet without, blood circulation and stuff. And so I was just like, well, maybe like, maybe he can pull through. Maybe he can pull through. And so, girl, next thing you know, my mom walks up. So like I said, they had lived in that same house forever, and so she knows the neighbors, and so she walks up there because I guess the probably just word of mouth. She heard about it, and so compressions, and of course, and she's his next to kin because she's the daughter. Okay, well, yeah, just keep doing chest compressions on him, and she just takes off walking. She just left walking down the street like nothing. And so we all leave. We go to the hospital, and of course, they pronounce him dead at the hospital. And it was like, yeah, we did all we could. And so we go back to see him. It was me and my boyfriend. Nobody else wanted like to see him like that. And so we just kind of cried, and I just felt like I said, I kind of felt like that was like some confirmation for me because I was like taking on so much trying to help take care of him because he really couldn't take care of himself. And then at that time, so I didn't talk about my journey about nursing school, but I had failed nursing school, and I reapplied, and I actually had got accepted to nursing school in Waxahachie, but I didn't accept it. Like I was waiting because I didn't want to leave my grandpa. And I was like, well, if I move away, like nobody's going to help him. And so my boyfriend was like, when we left the hospital, I was so upset. He was like, maybe this was just God's plan because, if Papa wouldn't have never got passed away, you wouldn't have never left Lubbock. And I was like, yeah, that is true. Like I wouldn't have left because I would have wanted to be there to like support him like he supported me. And so he was like, yeah, he was like, and the fact that this could be just a theory, but I kind of believe it a little bit. But he was like, how he couldn't find transportation and how, the first ride failed his sister and how he had to go. He was like, I feel like, maybe he felt maybe that was his answer too, like knowing that you're okay, like that you're going to be taken care of, like because now that I have my boyfriend, because before it was just me and BJ, and it was really hard. And so basically our story is that we feel that people say like they wait to take their last breath to see um basically to know that their people are going to be okay. So I kind of feel like that he felt like it was okay, like for him to pass on because he knew he was supposed to have heart surgery, but he refused it. He didn't want to do it. And so, yeah, so after that happened, the next day I accepted my offer for nursing school. And like 3 months later, we ended up moving down here to the Dallas area, and I went to nursing school. And honestly, if my grandpa wouldn't have never left like that, I probably wouldn't be a nurse today, honestly, because I wouldn't have took that opportunity to come here for school. And yeah, I don't really talk much to my family because as soon as they said he was dead in the hospital, my family that was there, the first thing they wanted to talk about was, oh, well, what are we going to do about his house? Well, does he have insurance? Like, how much money did he have left in the bank? And I'm like, well, can we at least have a funeral first before we talk about, what we're going to do for his house? And that's literally all my grandpa had was his house. Like, it wasn't a nice one, but I mean, I just know how hard he worked. And even though that all he could afford was his house, like to me, that's important to me because I know that his house meant everything to him, whether it was falling apart or not. So, yeah.
Wow. What a story. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I agree that our loved ones sometimes wait until they know that we're going to be okay before
Yeah.
they fully leave sometimes. I know you said that your grandmother passed away in 2020, and that was during COVID. And I know hospitals were strict and everything was strict. Was she already in the hospital, or how did that process play out with COVID?
Well, so she got COVID, they diagnosed her, and they just had sent her back home. And so she was at home first. But once again, I was going over trying to take care of her because, nobody really knows much about medical stuff. And my grandma, she was like kind of well, she was overweight. And so I would just go over, try to take care of her. And so I ended up taking her to the emergency room, like probably like 3 days after she was diagnosed because her oxygen levels kept going low, like when I would go over and check on her. And they sent her back home again. And I was so upset because, older, especially older Black people, like a lot of them don't know nothing about health. And if you ask them how they're doing, they're gonna lie and say they're doing okay. Like I don't know why they do that, but they just, oh, I'm fine, I got a little headache, like they just kind of downplay it. And I know that's the same thing my grandpa did at his doctor's appointment. And I know that's what she did when she went to the emergency, and they wouldn't let family in because of COVID. And so I took her back home, and a couple of days after that, I had went over to see her because I was going to see her every day, and I had to like clean her up. And it was once again, I had to like, be strong for her. I wanted to cry just because I had never seen her like not able to take care of herself or anything. And I know she was embarrassed when I walked in her room because, like, I can smell that she had had an accident. I was like, "Did you have an accident?" And she didn't want to tell me. And I was like, "It's okay, Granny. Like, I'll clean you up. Like, I just, want to make sure you're comfortable." And so she was like, "Okay." And she just told me where to get her clothes and stuff. And so that's kind of how I really knew she was going downhill. And so later on that night, my grandpa called and told me that he had to call the ambulance because she really wasn't responding. And so the ambulance came and got her, and she stayed in the hospital, I'd say about 2 weeks, and they ended up having to intubate her. And it was really sad how they did people during COVID because family could not go up there. And so, like I say, if you already old, you don't know nothing about healthcare, you cannot represent yourself. You don't know what's going on. And so you're having to just call on the phone. And like they had an iPad, but like, she's on the ventilator, so it's not like she can talk back. And so I was the one in charge of that. So they would call me with updates, or I would call them to get updates. And so just kind of playing that waiting game to see if she was going to get stronger, and like, because nobody had seen her. And so one day I was on my way to pick up I got off of work, I had got food, I was taking it to my grandpa, and I was literally like down the street from their house, and the doctor had called me from the hospital. And he was like, "Oh, is this Ayana?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is her." And he was like, "Oh, this is Doctor whatever here at the hospital." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "Your grandma took a turn today, and we couldn't bring her back." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Your grandma passed, and we couldn't bring her back." And I was like that's it? Like you just throw it out there like that? No compassion? And so I was like, I couldn't believe it because he just said it just so straightforward, like it was just nothing. And so I just parked like on the side of the road. Like I was on their street, but I parked on the side of the road, and I was like, I have tried to get myself together. So like I cried and I sat there, and I remember calling Kendra actually, because she was the one who stepped in to start helping me like with everything going on. And so I called her, and I was just like, I don't know how to tell my grandpa this, like, and I was just kind of mad a little bit because it's like, why does it have to be me? Like, why does I have to be the one to tell him this? And then I can't even be in my own emotions because I feel like if I look week, it's gonna be harder for him. I almost felt selfish to feel sad because I'm like, oh, that's been his wife for like 60 years. Like, who am I to be more sad than him? He took a bigger loss than I did. And so after I was able to get myself together, I prayed about it, and I walked in. And as soon as I walked in, my grandpa, he already knew. Like he saw it on my face. And I sat down at the table, and he was just like, "How was work?" And I was just like, "It was good." And he was like, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, I'll talk to the doctor. And like he just busted out crying. But yeah, he was just like yeah, it was so sad. But yeah, just watching him cry, I just like they helped me so much, and I'm just so grateful. And so yeah, so that's I had to tell him that news. And so from that moment on, like we just kind of, just did it
Mm-hmm.
together. I helped him try to get the funeral and everything and all that stuff. And it was really, like I say, I guess I wasn't that young. I'm 30 now, so I probably was maybe like 26 or so, 26, 27. And but like I say, I didn't have life insurance. I didn't know nothing about getting a death certificate and like all of that stuff. So I'm literally helping him do all of this because he didn't know either. Like, they wasn't just very smart because I don't even know what grade they went to.
Hmm.
So it goes back to how they were raised. Like, I don't feel like a lot of them were raised with just love and compassion, which I know is hard when you have so many kids and, you're trying to raise them. Like, I don't feel like, I guess after my grandma died, is kind of how I realized that a lot of them didn't, I guess, get like basically how I felt from my mom is how they felt from my grandma. But she, like I said, my mom was the youngest, so they had like a chance to do over with her. And so, which I don't feel like it was intentional. I feel like back then they just did the best that they could do. And I mean, that's just that. But yeah, I hate that nobody even cared to even do anything.
Wow. Again, I'm so sorry for your loss. I don't think I've ever had an episode where I'm over here tearing up.
So I'm sorry. I
So,
didn't think I would tear up, girl. I thought I was cried out. But
well, how old were your grandparents when they passed away?
so, dang, I always forget. That's why I always say the year they were born in. So, I think my grandma hadn't. I think she was 79. I don't think she had turned 80 yet because she was born in 1940. And then my grandpa, he was like 80, maybe 82, 83. So, and they were like 2 years apart. So he was
Hmm.
born in, I think, 37. Well, no,
Wow.
maybe 3 years apart, 1937. Yeah, so my grandpa was in his 80s, and my grandma she hadn't turned 80 yet. She was like 79.
That's so tragic.
So, but
Ha-
I'm glad they lived as long as they did.
yeah, that's seriously a blessing
Hmm.
to live that long. So, with you taking us through your childhood, it seems like you relied heavily upon your grandparents' love. How have you been able to move past the grief? I think I heard you at one point today say you don't feel like you fully got to grieve your grandmother. So, what has that process been like for you?
Um, well, I did not know you was gonna have me this emotional today. I really, so that's why I was like, when I was thinking about this episode, I was like, have I really got over the grief? But I just kind of feel like grief is an ongoing thing, to be honest. I don't feel like I have fully grieved my grandma. And I think when my grandpa passed, I was really just still kind of so numb from like not being able to grieve my grandma. So that I was kind of just like, another bad thing happening. So I feel like, so was the question was how was I get over the grief? Is that what it was?
Not necessarily get over, since I know grief
Mm-hmm.
personally is an ongoing journey, but what have you been doing to heal the
Like
grief?
heal the grief. So I feel like what I've done that has helped me, like, I basically pray a lot, and I talk to my boyfriend a lot because he's also been through a lot of stuff. So me and him can kind of relate to like a lot of things, and um, I also started watching a lot of videos like on YouTube and stuff because I've never been to a therapist and I feel like I need to, but like there's so many resources on YouTube and stuff that I would go to and listen to. And that's kind of what made me realize that I have like a lot of trauma is by listening to like those videos on YouTube. And I'm real big on podcast. And so then I dove into like personal development. And honestly, you helped me a lot because when I met you, and we did the challenge together. So that my grandma was in the hospital during that time. And so those videos helped a lot. The Jim Rohn videos about just personal growth and then just changing kind of like my dynamics to being around just kind of more positivity and just seeing like how there is other options, like there's more life on the other side because that was completely different from me and what I was used to. So I think, yeah, just a combination of prayer, having positive influence, and I would say get a therapist if you can get one because the videos like have helped me a lot. But it just kind of makes me worry like now that I'm pregnant because my grandparents was such a big support system. Like I've always worked really long hours. I usually go to work at like 5 in the morning, and like I literally had a key to their house, and I would go in and take my son into the extra room that they had, and I would go to work. And I always knew like that was always an open door. Like if I didn't have nothing else, nowhere else to go, that was what I was going to rely on because I didn't like my mom and my dad. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're still alive and they're just absent. They do absolutely nothing. So my grandparents were like that figure for me. So I kind of feel like now that I'm having another baby, I kind of feel like I'm kind of going through grief again just because I'm wondering what's that going to look like for me. But I feel like it's going to work out.
It's
So,
absolutely going to work out.
hmm
Your little village will circle around you. I can only imagine being
hmm
pregnant a second time and not having the people who were there for you so much the
yeah.
first time. So that's totally valid to feel like that. What are some empowering words you'd give to a woman who just lost her loved one back to back? I know that you're still dealing with your grief, but I know you personally. I see you all the time online as a content creator, and I see you striving for your goals, knocking them out, and trying again when you don't. So, what would your words of empowerment be for that lady?
My words of empowerment is to just always remember that it's always light at the end of the tunnel. Like I literally had that saved in my mind, like just throughout my whole journey, because there's always going to be stuff that happens. And actually, I think you might have told me that one day, like, oh, like, well, it might be this bad thing happening now, but it's going to be something else that happens later. So it's like just basically being mentally prepared and just always knowing that it's not the end. Like if you're in the middle of chaos, God didn't put us here to just live a life filled with chaos and confusion. So that should give somebody hope to know that it's not the end. If everything is not working out and it's chaos, just know that you're in the middle of a storm and that too shall pass. So dealing with as far as like if losing somebody, like it's okay to feel the emotions. Like don't you don't have to run from the emotions. You don't have to try to hide it, or even if it's 10 years later and you have an emotional breakdown, like that is okay and it's normal. Like nobody grieves the same, and you just never know. Like you never know what might trigger you to feel grief, but it's okay, and it's actually healthy to let it out and not be like me and just hold it in all the time because then it just explodes. But yeah, it's definitely gonna shine again one day.
I love that. That's really empowering. I feel
Mm.
empowered in my own journey from hearing that and hearing your story here today. Where can the people find you if they want to connect with you?
So I'm on Instagram. Actually, I'm on Instagram and YouTube. Instagram is the nursing code. YouTube might be either Lovely A or the nursing code. Why don't I know my own handle? But yes, so I'm definitely on Instagram, and I do post a lot of like inspirational stuff on there because sometimes we just need that little boost because life is not easy.
It's not by far. And for those looking for Ayana, you're welcome to look at the show notes, and I will have a link to where you can find her. Well, Ayana, you have been a blessing to have here tonight. I don't take it lightly that you've come here to be
Mhm.
vulnerable. I know without a doubt that what you've been through is only going to continue to inspire and motivate people. So I encourage you to use your voice. Your story is so powerful. Like, I'm blown away. I have chills. So I know it's for a reason. And again, I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel honored.
Thank you for tuning in to Lean. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to take on whatever challenges come your way. If this conversation resonated with you, make sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use a little extra encouragement. The Lean podcast thrives because of listeners like you. So let's continue to build this community. Drop a comment, leave a review, and let us know what topics you'd love to hear more about. And if you haven't yet, be sure to join our Facebook group, the Ladies Empowerment and Alignment Network, where the conversation and support continues every day. Until next time, keep leaning into growth, empowerment, and alignment. Thanks for being a part of the Lean community.